Hello! Welcome to video 2 in the Kaleidoscope series at the Gallagher Blue Dorn as you get ready to see the performance of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad by Douglas Jones with music by Ron Barnett and performed by Virginia Repertory Theater. I am your guide, Christina Farrell. In our first video, we thought of all the ways that people tell stories. It turns out there are a lot of ways. And we asked, why do stories matter? How do stories change the world? Can stories keep us alive? Maybe we can find some answers to those questions as we see how stories played a role in Harriet Tubman's life. So Harriet Tubman was born in Maryland sometime between 1819 and 1823. She was born into an enslaved family, and no official record was kept of her birth, so that part of her story remains a mystery. As a child, people would read stories from the Bible to her, including the story of Moses, who defied the laws of the Pharaoh, instead following the commandments of God, and led his people, the Hebrews, through the wilderness to freedom. And as she grew, Harriet heard reports of enslaved people in the deep South who were beaten and forced to work with chains around their wrists and ankles until their skin was worn off. These stories were horrifying. Over the years, Harriet gathered her own terrifying stories that were told by the scars on her face and her body. Tales of being whipped, beaten, and even hit in the head with a heavy weight. But she also heard tales that there was a network of white people who would help escaped slaves find their way north to freedom by hiding them in secret shelters and providing food and medicine. This made her hopeful, but she also knew that anyone that was caught would be punished brutally and sometimes even killed. So when she heard a rumor that she and the other slaves on her plantation may be sold further south, she had a decision to make. Would she go south and face torture and brutality, or would she risk escaping to the north, leaving her family and the dangerous possibility of being caught? Her life hung in the balance, and she had to make her decision based solely on stories. In other words, stories were a matter of life and death. Now it's time for you to help tell a bit of Harriet Tubman's story. Let's look at a photo from the play Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. Imagine this is the moment that Harriet is deciding what she will do, escape or not. What might she be thinking and feeling? What's at stake for her? To help us shape her story, let's pretend that the objects the set designer has placed on the stage are symbols that represent this difficult decision that Harriet has to make. So take the fence, for instance. Fences are built to divide. What divisions exist in Harriet's life? What boundaries would she need to cross? What might the fence symbolize about the decision she faces? Now look at the stars. Stars are tiny points of light in a dark sky. What meaning might the stars have for Harriet? How might stars play a role in her life? And finally, there is an American flag. Flags are symbols that represent countries. What do you think America means to Harriet? So grab your paper and your pen. You are going to use your ideas to become a playwright and write 3 lines that Harriet might speak or think while she's making her critical decision whether to escape or not. The first line is about what the fence symbolizes to Harriet. The second line is about what the stars mean to her. And the final line is about what the flag represents. Take a minute to write your 3 lines, and when we come back, we'll learn a bit more about the symbols in Harriet's life. Now that you've thought about what's at stake in Harriet's decision, let's see what happens next in her story. As you may have guessed, Harriet Tubman decided to escape north to freedom. In 1849, she left Maryland and fled north to Pennsylvania. When she arrived, she met others who were bravely taking action against slavery, the abolitionists. She learned the secrets of how they were helping slaves escape to freedom, and she agreed to help them lead more rescue missions. This network was called the Underground Railroad. Of course, it wasn't really underground or a railroad. Underground only meant that it was secret and hidden, and it was like a railroad because it created a pathway for people to travel. But it was also called a railroad because in 1830, America's first railroads began to run. This was exciting news, and people all over the country were talking about this fantastic mode of transportation. This new development created a host of terms that became code words for the activities of the Underground Railroad. The people who helped the slaves escape became conductors. Safe places to hide were called stations, and sometimes the people traveling would be called baggage. And because everybody was talking about these words at the time, it didn't raise any suspicion for members of the Underground Railroad to talk about these things too. It also wouldn't have raised any suspicion to hear slaves singing spirituals or gospel tunes that told Bible stories. The practice of singing together was a cultural tradition that enslaved Africans brought with them to America. So slave owners didn't think twice when they heard lyrics like this.
When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go.
To the ears of slaveholders, this was simply a gospel tune. But the slaves knew that Egypt symbolized the southern states, and the song was a rallying cry to urge people to help the abolitionists. So the railroad was a symbol, Bible references and songs were symbols, and once people began to share her stories, Harriet Tubman herself became a symbol. But a symbol of what? Let's examine some key points about her life. She was the Underground Railroad's most famous conductor and led so many people to freedom that she herself earned the nickname Moses. Later, during the Civil War, she became a spy and a nurse for the Union Army. And she was the first woman to ever lead a military operation in the United States. She applied the tricks that she had learned through the Underground Railroad to conduct the Combahee Ferry Raid, which freed over 700 slaves. She also became a vocal advocate for women's voting rights before she died in 1913 at about the age of 100. So knowing everything that she accomplished, how would you finish this sentence? Harriet Tubman was a symbol of... What ideals does she represent? What might she symbolize particularly for Black Americans or for women? What does her story represent to you? Take a moment to write your sentence. Harriet Tubman is a symbol of... Now, what if that were the very last line of the play that you're going to see? Harriet Tubman is a symbol of... If you were the director, how would you instruct the actress playing Harriet to stand? Should she be standing tall, leaning forward, hunched over? What if she were sitting or kneeling? Where would you tell her eyes to focus? Straight ahead? Skyward? Or looking over her shoulder? What would she be doing with her arms? Would she be standing alone or with others? How could you capture the ideas that she represents in just one pose? When you watch the play, notice the director and the actor's choices. What ideas are they expressing by how they stand, speak, or move? What are some symbols that appear throughout the play, and what do they represent to you? And finally, notice how this story impacts you. What moments stand out to you, and what makes those particular moments memorable? Is this a story that can change the world? Enjoy the play, and we'll see you next time.